Okay, everybody, today is the day where boobs out, brain out finally meets biceps out, brain out. I am joined by Sam Arms, who has the arms and he is going to display it for us, or them, I should say, for us in a minute. He's a political strategist, super smart, super opinionated, lobbyist. So, Sam, welcome to the chat. Let's get this party started on a rainy Monday, shall we?
Awesome.
Deemed the celebrity whisperer by Playboy.
This is the best interview of the day.
Thanks for having me.
You hit the nail on the head.
100%.
Period, yeah.
Touch them. You're cracking me up.
Wear them, baby.
This is good.
Taylor Ferber.
Thank you for having me, Taylor. Super excited to be here and talk about whatever it is you want to talk about.
You guys, I did not prep Sam, so that's how much he is like suns out,
Bone and blinds.
ready to go. Speaking of, I just feel like we owe the people. I'll show mine if you show yours.
They're actually, I'm cutting right now too, so they should be bigger. You saw do you know who the Krasensteins are?
I don't. It's like my camera's 5D though, so.
Oh, 5D. We'll talk about that later. They just published something about fitness and working out I thought was funny.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I guess you guys, if you're listening, you're going to have to go to YouTube for that visual magic experience of your life. But you are hot off of being in Dubai for a Bitcoin conference that was out there. I know that you were like moving and shaking, rubbing shoulders, talking with like Eric Trump. In a little bit of a nutshell, give us a little flavor, give us a tea. How was that? How was he? How was it meeting him?
It was awesome. I mean, I had two goals. So I went to Dubai specifically to meet with Eric Trump. He was talking to the governments over there about a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which is actually a piece of legislation that I'm pushing right now in Florida. And then I also wanted to meet with some of the government officials in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and just build relationships there because that's my world. And so I was only supposed to go Saturday to Wednesday, and it ended up being such a productive trip. I extended my stay 4 extra days. So it was awesome. I mean, going to Dubai in the Middle East, like the UAE specifically, game-changing experience. I mean, it's clean. They're doing everything they can to attract entrepreneurs and businesses. So it was a really welcoming environment. I had a blast.
You're like, it's clean. Not like LA where there's a homeless guy throwing his feces at
Literally,
what a breath of fresh air. But how was it, Sam, meeting Eric? It's funny. I was actually a few months ago with Don Jr. at an event,
nice.
Tucker Carlson, which I'll get to. But how was it actually meeting him? Did you just kind of go up to him let's talk about it.
He came because you had to have a whale pass. He spoke backstage, and it was a real intimate environment. There's probably less than 100 or maybe 50 people there. And he was asking, it was he was doing a presentation, and then I was just front and center, and I asked him a question. And my question was, and it was a strategic question, because it said, "Hey, I'm Samuel from Florida. I'm passing Bitcoin Strategic Reserve here. I'm hoping your wife becomes our next senator," because that might happen. I want to know if he was going to put Bitcoin on the Trump organization's balance sheet. And so he gave this long answer, and then as soon as he was done presenting, he beelined it toward me and shook my hand. It was "Hey, let's talk about X, Y, and Z." Nice. And so we did. So I'll probably follow up with him later. But he's a really cool dude. He's taller than me, so I think he's 6'3". But it was very productive, very cool.
That's awesome. I, like I said, was just at an event with his brother, with Don, with Tucker, and it was so interesting to me because my background, as you know, is in Hollywood and observing and being among celebrities. And watching Don Jr., his daughter, who's now blown up, and then with Kimberly, whatever, and observing them, I was wow, this is literally another Hollywood, right? How people act around them, the whole thing. But we talked, the theme of that night, it was when the Bitcoin conference was happening here in Nashville. And what I talked with Tucker about, what the theme of the night about, was really about, they're kind of buzzwords that are watered down right now, unfortunately, but free speech and censorship. And now Trump is going to be our president. And I think all of that, around media censorship, it's all going to be impacted and changed. How do you think we're going to notice some differences?
Yeah, and that's kind of my job, by the way, is I spent the past 6 months to a year essentially telling people in my industry, which is Bitcoin and Web3 and all that fun stuff, I was like, you need to pick a candidate and we need to back them. And that means actually giving them cash and being vocal. And that was Donald Trump, which, by the way, there's still a lot of people in that industry who really do not like Trump. Funny enough, even the media in that industry is super anti-Trump. So that was like a big thing that I did. So obviously, and the Bitcoin Magazine people raised over like $100 million for him. And one thing I teach is like, okay, so now as a policy guy, if you want influence in the Trump administration, well, one, you should have donated. But two, if you didn't do that, you need to get to know the people who did donate and the Bitcoin Magazine people. And that's a lady named Tracy, who's amazing, and another guy named David Bailey. They're now going to have a lot of influence in the administration. So, I mean, I'm super excited to the points that you said. I think now that he's president, tech, free speech, finance, everything under the sun, health is a big deal. I was just talking to someone from RFK Jr.'s team earlier today, which I'm really personally excited about. I think America the next 4 years is just going to be awesome, assuming we can ram through the agenda that we want to.
They are going to be channeling RFK. They're going to be ditching the Fruit Loops. They're going to be pulling a Sam, pulling a Taylor, like with their 100%. Biceps popping. It's going to be a moment. Guys, 100%. By the way, if you're not familiar, David Bailey is he's the founder, right, Sam, of Bitcoin?
Yes.
Yeah. And when we talk about how everything is kind of shape-shifting in media, how it's been revealed how Meta and Mark Zuckerberg has changes to, like, donated to Trump, right, for his,
only $1 million though, only $1 million.
Yes, like whining and dining with him at Mar-a-Lago. All this is happening. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I am on the edge of my seat. But with that said, you and I often joke about how DC is the Hollywood for smart, ugly people. And so with this, like, where's the lie, though? Fact checked, okay?
Well, the lie's in the smart. I don't know how smart they are, but it's definitely, that's what they say. It's Hollywood for ugly people.
AOC. No, just kidding. Okay. But is Trump and what is he, like 80? His 80-year-old ass?
Yeah, 83.
83, making Hollywood sexy. Think about it. It's like all these young, hot people, athletes across the world are emulating the Trump dance, even in his like awkward movement. It is just taking over. And I would argue the White House hasn't been sexy since like JFK. So is DC becoming the new Hollywood and becoming like sexy again? I don't know.
No, that's actually a great take. Like, people are going to think it's comedic, but it's actually true, because one of the reasons I think that he won was the cultural effect of Donald Trump, which Donald Trump has always been a cultural icon. But in 2016, even to 2020, people were kind of like, okay, we're ditching him as a cultural icon, which they really tried to do. But come this election cycle, you had this is a big deal. You had every major comedian coming out and interviewing him. You had like Zoomers my age, like Aiden Ross, coming out and using their platforms. You had Jake and Logan Paul talking to him. Right. You had all the boxers. Yes. So we have not had that type of, to your point, cultural momentum, certainly since JFK. So absolutely. And you have one of the most like sophisticated, elite, and young, good-looking teams in the White House. You have Tulsi Gabbard. You have Elon Musk. You have Vivek. Like, you have these figures who, to younger people, are actually cool, not like media psyop cool. So 100% you're spot on.
Okay. Speaking of psyop, kind of, we know that, not to open a can of worms, because I know how passionate you are about Bitcoin, not to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but funny how Bitcoin was a whole conspiracy until it wasn't, right? Like, now it's mainstream. Now it's like here, there, everywhere. It's everywhere. So funny how that works. But speaking of conspiracy, one that we may see playing out before our eyes is the New Jersey drones, like the China spy balloon 2.0 reboot. Okay. What the fuck is going on? You have hacks like John Kirby saying we don't know, like no one knows anything, whether it be, in Congress or news anchors, like it's all just a mess. So feel free to take the floor with your thoughts on this. And secondly, we are going to get a little freaky deaky, okay, and let our freak flags fly. I want to hear, because I know you have thoughts. Your favorite conspiracy theory that you will like ride or die for. Like you have no shame in your game.
So the drone thing's interesting because I've gotten a lot of different opinions. And I think the one that I'm most settled on is I do think they are US drones. And I do think they could be US military drones and that they're conducting some kind of exercise that they're just not telling us about. Part of politics and strategy and like, as you being a media person, you fully well understand or are expert at this. We're not in the room. We're not a fly on the wall, but what you can do is kind of read the tea leaves. So, for example, the fact that Trump came out and was like, the military could stop this. What are they doing? What's going on?
Right.
But he didn't, if you notice, he didn't say like, this is a foreign threat from Iran. Like if this was if there's some foreign ship off our coast sending drones our way, we would absolutely know. Like you could not hide that information, right? So for the information to be hidden, it actually has to come internally, right? So the US government is doing something weird. My mind always goes to, okay, well, we're talking about it. So what are they doing right now that they're trying to get us to miss? Like, what's the goal? Maybe it's an exercise, right? Maybe this is a giant psyop to see what Americans do and respond. It's very odd. I mean, and what makes it odd is normally I can find someone who has a decent opinion, like scrolling through Twitter, there's some expert, and I'm like, okay, so that's a pretty plausible theory. But this is the one time where I haven't seen anyone really say, I know what's up, which is very, very interesting. I mean, there's all this talk of like, is this a dirty bomb exercise? I think that I saw a report today that apparently some uranium or plutonium was missing. And so they're thinking, oh, like, what would we do if there was a dirty bomb threat? But then I had some of my intel buddies say, like, well, our system to find a dirty nuke is so sophisticated that we would have already known by now. We don't need drones to do that. We already have that stuff in place. So this is one of the few times where I'm really like at a loss, actually. Like my only guess is I know it's from the US. I know it's from inside. It's not some foreign entity, in my opinion. And for some reason, they're just not telling us. And not even like the congressman in New Jersey, Congressman Van Drew. He's like, yo, what the hell's going on? Right.
Okay. Do you think that they actually know or they're just playing dumb? And what are we like? Do they think that we are that dumb? Because now with social media, it's not like even in the old days where someone saw something and they could pay you off and make you go like now everything's everywhere all at once. So, or do they really not know? And do they think we're that stupid that we're not going to be asking these questions?
I think your first point's really good. One of the hardest things to figure out in government is if they're incompetent or if it's planned, because it is absolutely true. A lot of times they're incompetent and we as a populace will piece together a story that actually doesn't exist when they're really just stupid. So that's a really good point. Two, I do think, because I do think this is planned, this particular case with the drones, I do think they're well aware that it would cause hysteria, right? That people would be like, yo, what's going on? And that to me is kind of like why I'm a little confused, because obviously they're trying to get it to take up a media news cycle. And anytime that's going on, it's like, okay, so what's the actual goal here? Maybe they are intel gathering. Americans are interesting because even 2 to 3 weeks from now, like this will be memory hold, right? When these drones are gone, people will have something else to kind of focus on. So that's another reason why they can actually try these sort of things and get away with it, because they know our attention spans are so short.
That's so sad. Well, if you do a little more digging, if you find out the tea, I know you're going to take it to TikTok, which we're going to get to as well. And then you have it right here on the hotline bling. Okay.
That's right.
Here to the Talk to Me Taylor show. Okay. And take it away in a nutshell. Convince us of your favorite conspiracy theory and why we should really think about it.
So I'm pretty boring in the conspiracy theory department because I take a lot of them and like flip them on their head. So like, okay, now I feel like believing in the moon landing is a conspiracy theory. And I believe that the people who say the moon landing never happened, like I believe that conspiracy theory is actually the psyop, because they don't want you to understand. Because if you believe we landed on the moon, the question is, well, why haven't we gone back? And when you start asking some of those questions, it leads you to some interesting conclusions.
I thought we have like 2 times.
Yeah, no, but a lot of people believe we never landed on the moon. right? Like the conspiracy theory is that we never landed on the moon. My conspiracy is that the conspiracy that we never landed on the moon is the psyop.
Wait, this is like an Inception moment, but I love where you're going with this.
Exactly. So I believe.
No, I love this is genius. Actually.
Yes. I believe the non-moon landing is actually propaganda.
Get us to believe.
Like it's trying to convince Americans that instead of looking at the past and asking, how are we such a great civilization? Why haven't we gone back? Right? They just would rather you focus on, oh, well, maybe we never landed there. Right? Because the logical conclusion is, why didn't we go back? Don't we have better technical capabilities now? So maybe we've actually been in this technological dark age that no one wants to think about. And we'd rather people start thinking that things we did in the past were made up in conspiracies as opposed to actually being real. Which is kind of like when you go back in time, there's a really good book called Species with Amnesia. And it's how we as a species are actually getting dumber. Well, it's about how we're getting dumber. When we look at previous alien technology or whatever we find, like the pyramids. And it's like, yeah, that was probably all built by humans, but maybe we're devolving. And so we'd rather say it was built by someone else as opposed to, oh, that was actually us and we don't know how to do it anymore.
Or like Stonehenge.
Exactly.
Okay, so to really like, I have my blonde moments sometimes. So just to walk me through.
Yeah.
So it's the psyop that you're saying of, guys, this was all it was not real. It was orchestrated. It was all a hoax. The moon landing is to distract us from.
Yeah, everything that I'm talking about.
From that it did or didn't happen.
It's to distract us from the reason why we haven't gone back.
Okay, I see.
So instead of having to justify a great achievement and say, oh, well, why can't we aspire to those great things anymore? You just go, well, we made it up. We never actually went. Or it's foreign propaganda, right? To make Americans believe they're actually not as great as they think they are.
Wow. Something to think about. I don't know how much I can get on this rocket ship and blast off, but I will say a moon landing conspiracy theory deep dive, as well as a flat earth, are on my to-do list. Just ask my Alexa, okay? Ask my Echo Dot. They both, I'm actually not even kidding. Both of these deep dives are on my to-do list. But speaking of conspiracy, there's another story playing out right now when it comes to manifestos, all this, right? With the United Healthcare CEO, his assassin, all this. So let's just lay something out off of the bat. We pretty much know why a manifesto and motivation for someone like this Luigi, who half of the internet is making their like hunky martyr hero, okay, is everywhere out in the open versus somebody like an attempted Trump assassin or the trans shooter that happened actually right here in Nashville, right? So we can already say why one's out in the open, others are buried. Like, how convenient. But when it comes to the whole United Healthcare, we know there are fractures and big problems with our healthcare system, right? But with this whole thing and how divided the internet is about it, some think, like I said, he's a martyr hero. Some think he's an entitled, spoiled brat. What aren't we seeing and what don't we know about this entire thing?
One interesting aspect is that some of these healthcare companies were being investigated by the DOJ, and I don't know if this theory is true anymore because it seems that from what I can tell, he was an independent actor, but let's say he was a hired hand or someone who was kind of psyoped into doing this. There's a possibility that, in America, every industry is kind of run by a cartel. Right? Pharmaceutical cartel, healthcare cartel, gas cartel, tech cartel, right? And our cartel is a small group of people who essentially are competitors, but kind of come to an agreement on certain laws that they make of themselves. And it's possible that that healthcare CEO may have had information. It was going to go to the DOJ and maybe rat out other members of the cartel. I remember seeing that theory like very soon after he was killed. And I don't know how plausible that is anymore per se, but it is interesting because also anytime there's a manifesto that normally screams that there was some kind of federal aspect to it, because murders happen all the time. Why do you need a manifesto, right? Sometimes I feel like the manifesto is the plant for whatever reason. Like it's very weird. Like from what I've seen, the kid had a debilitating back surgery. I'm not like so bad that I'm not sure he was even able to have sex. Like that was like kind of what I got online. And this like led to a lot of frustration. He was in hundreds. Yeah, it would. But to be honest, like who wouldn't go crazy? Like you're 21 or however old he is. He's in like $150,000 worth of debt because of medical procedures. And he can't even function fully as a guy. Like that would drive anyone nuts. That alone, I think, is reason enough to where, yeah, I can see why that would drive someone crazy. But then to have a manifesto to me is very weird because I'm like, why would you need to announce to the world? So I find those kind of moments interesting. And I think one of the things to come of that is people don't realize how safe of a society we actually live in, to the point where like how many people are out in public. Like now you're seeing like CVS took down their CEOs off the website. You saw like Blue Cross Blue Shield was like, okay, we need to delist these people. Before this, I mean, you could walk out in the open as any kind of CEO.
Oh, yeah.
And I think now that's a sign that, hey, maybe things are going to get a little bit more dangerous. And if you are head of a company, maybe you do need security now because like people are like, oh, it's that easy. Like I could just see them on the street and murder somebody.
It's crazy too, because I said this is like not to go down this rabbit hole, but this is like the Hamas lovers all over again, because I posted something similarly to what you just said in the vein of, okay, like our healthcare system has problems, but you don't just go and murder somebody in cold blood. And
He wasn't even the top guy.
He celebrated, right. And people came out of the trenches of the wretched TikTok to be like, oh, but you're not the CEO of it. Like just justify it, just like they did with Mott's, right? Like it's just this deranged, disproportionate view of like justice, in my opinion. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out or does not, or lack thereof, I suppose, with all this, right?
Yeah, I mean, popular culture is led by resentment politics, which is just, hating what you're not. And so those people always come out of the woodwork. And none of them actually have the balls to even do some of the stuff that they say anyway.
Never.
So.
Never. That's like the irony is they're some of the most like entitled brats of them all. But
correct.
Something you hit on, I'm actually going to reverse my order here. Because
yeah, sure. Hit me.
You talk, we're going to go with it. You talked about even like somebody like this assassin, right? Primal innate needs as a man. Go with me on this journey. Okay, I'm going.
Okay.
And like how even not having sex would make you go nutty. Okay, you're a conservative. Yeah. And something, let's like on a fun social level, right, that I've seen happen is gender norms and almost reverting back to traditional norms, because it's been such a swing of the broad, Bernie, independent women, shit on men, this whole thing. And now women are like, well, oh, fuck. Like, I kind of want the trad, like it is the return of the trad wife for both women and men wanting that. So you as young, good looking, obviously very smart, like what are your thoughts as a conservative of the kind of conservative swing and the return of the trad wife?
I don't know. To be honest, I haven't given that actually much thought. What's interesting is all I understand is that there's always a social contract between men and women, and the current one, at least in the United States, continues to break up. When I was in the UAE, obviously that is a very strict culture when it comes to men and women. But it was interesting because like the women there, like, how in America or in the West, a lot of times, like a lot of women want to be where the men are, want to go hang out with the men. Whereas the women in the UAE are like, I want nothing to do with any of that. I don't mind that my man is taking control of everything and doing everything, because what's interesting is like the richer, wealthier women think that to have the kind of interactions we have here in the United States between men and women, that's like what the poor women do in the UAE, right? And I'm like, I'm not saying that's correct, but I'm like, oh, what an interesting different social contract between men and women. So I think a lot of the like trad wife stuff, like, I don't know how real or tangible that is, because to be honest, I think some of the more radical feminist lingo was just kind of cool to talk about, but I don't think women necessarily ascribe to it completely. Just how like with the trad stuff, I don't think they necessarily ascribe to that either. And I don't even know what that means, right? I mean, a common joke that I have with all my buddies is like, I'm a better cook than any woman that I've ever dated, right? Does that disqualify them? Well, my nana would say it does.
Right.
Yeah, like my nana would, literally,
Funny. Yeah.
if I told my nana, I'm not dating someone who cooks for me, she'd be like, why are you talking to her? Right. But like in the modern day context, like, do I want a woman who can cook better than me? Yeah, absolutely. But like 2-3 months into dating them, that's not like the priority, right?
Totally.
I'm not.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of all bullshit in a very real sense. Cause I joke with my buddies, like I've gone on dates with Democratic women or liberal women,
And
right? Because on the date, it doesn't matter though, because we don't talk politics. We don't talk, like I can go on a date with any type of woman. Now to actually date them and try to marry them, that's a different story. But I can go on a date with any woman and I think make it fun. So it's not really a top concern for me, at least at this present moment.
it's on top concern from this conservative. It's funny you say that though, because I always see these. I try to make the puns happen wherever I can.
Yeah, that was a good effort. I don't know how you
Thank you
did
for
that one,
effort
but I
on that
tried.
one.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I always see these conservative pundits, like the Daily Wires, the Charlie Kirks,
Yeah.
and they'll make a point of how conservative women are so much hotter and they'll make liberal women this sort of stereotype of like, blue hair and armpit hair and like rings in their nose and all this shit. But no, I appreciate what you said. I'm in a similar boat of, me personally, I like tying things that work traditionally and mixing it with the new. I don't think it has to be. I think it's like that kind of synonymous marriage, no pun intended, is actually really nice. And people are so extreme in one or the other. So I think ultimately, like, kind of mixing that is where it's at. But lastly for you is your thoughts on the potential TikTok ban, because I feel a type of way about TikTok. I think it is the most toxic, brainwashing, turning our youth's brains into mush. I know you're really successful on it though, and Trump was successful leading up to the election. So final kind of thoughts on that future potentially.
Yeah, I like TikTok. I don't want to see it get banned. I would like if someone like a Peter Thiel would buy it. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. And I think that'll be fine. I mean, the reality is everything comes with a positive and negative, right? So you trade the brain rot TikTok for the fact that TikTok was reporting on things with that like Twitter and Facebook weren't. The algorithm is obviously effective, right? It's changed the game to the point where now everyone's kind of like trying to copy it. And it invented doomer scrolling, right? If you know what that is, where you're just constantly looking at your phone in a never-ending feed. It invented that, but now every social media and even like YouTube and Spotify is very interesting, are trying to replicate that as well. So that means everything's kind of become TikTok. So I don't want to see it be banned. I'd like to see someone like an Elon Musk, but not specifically buy it, because I view it as an effective tool to actually promote ideas that I like, as opposed to like Instagram's threads or like Facebook or Reddit or whatever.
We'll see. I'm hopeful. I'd like that outcome. I'm also hopeful, put a button on all this, as I'm sure you are too, with Kash Patel, the FBI. Like, if I don't get answers about JFK, they will be hearing from me. There will be hell to pay. I don't know what you're most excited for that he hopefully will dig into, reveal.
I mean, he said JFK, he said 9/11, and he said Epstein and Diddy. Like he said, he's got, so like that's crazy. So I think once he's in power, it's going to be nuts.
It's going to be nuts. All right, Sam, I got to let you go. You have 1 minute. Tell us why. I mean, not that we need any more proof, but your mission, where we can find you, why we should come to you. And if you want to do part of it with like, or, tack on a little like ending view of that beauty you've been working on, by all means, we're not going to stop you.
My name is Samuel Arms. That's the same as all my social media. So if you just look up Samuel Arms, it's just spelled Armez, on TikTok, Instagram, X, what have you, YouTube. And my goal is to try to discuss political strategy. I try not to be too partisan. I just try to give like a strategist viewpoint and say, hey, here's what they're trying to do with this information. And so that's kind of my goal, and where I educate people, as well as like how to actually lobby and pass legislation. That's what I'm passionate about. So appreciate you having me on the show. I'm sure I'll see you plenty in the future, Taylor.
I'll tell you where you're going to see me plenty in the future is taking over DC.
That's right. I know. Maybe I'll see you, or you go to the inauguration. I'll be there.
Let's go.
I'll be there. Let's do it.
Wait, you know what I saw? Very last thing. I saw Laura Ingraham be like, if you want to really show unity, Taylor Swift, like step up and perform at the inauguration. So probably over our dead body, but that would be something, wouldn't it?
I don't find her attractive and I don't really listen to her music. So she can stay home. That's fine.
She's busy that day. No.
Yeah.
I won't be making pasta for her anytime soon.
That's right. That's right. 100%. 100%.
All right, Sam, until next time.
All right. Thank you, Taylor.
You-